Hi everybody, how are you tonight? My name is Amy Parsons and we're here to answer some questions. I have two questions that are very similar that came in this week. So what I wanted to do tonight is let you know what both the questions were, and then I'll be able to answer them. A lot of the information will overlap. So let me read the questions here for you. So the first one was from Marta, who has a 6-month-old female Havanese puppy. If you're not familiar with Havanese, they're adorable, smaller dogs, longer hair. They look kind of like little teddy bears. They're very cute. So, but Marta's issue is this little girl is nipping at her children when her children come near her. So if the dog is next to Marta and one of the children comes over, she's actually nipped both of her children. She got her son in the face, I think near the lip, and she also nipped at her daughter. Her parents, Marta's parents, live with them, and the dog is also nipping at the parents. Anytime her mom will walk through the house, the dog is nipping at her feet or legs, and nipping at the father as well. And she said that her question was that the kids feed the dog all the time. Her dad gives the dog treats. So she, if all of that's going on, why is the dog still acting this way, and does she have an aggressive puppy on her hands? So that's the first question. The second question is from Kristen, who has a 4-month-old lab mix. She said it's a lab, Australian Shepherd, Collie, and Border Collie mix. So I giggle because usually when you rescue a dog, anytime they put lab in there, it's usually not true. They call all puppies that have either black coloring or chocolate coloring or yellow labs because it's an easier adoption. So, but it sounds like the dog is mostly herding breeds, which is it's a different dog than a lab. So, and her issue with her female puppy is that they're currently in a training class and they're having an issue because the dog is extremely distracted by the other dogs in the class and can't focus. She has a 5- and a 7-year-old children who the dog will herd them, chase them around. Herding breeds, they'll chase the children and bite at the back of their ankles or jump up and bite at their arms or their legs. Sometimes they get them in the rear end. And that she's doing it enough that she's already broken skin on her son. And when she tries to walk her on a leash, the puppy is jumping up and grabbing the leash, chewing on the leash, tugging on the leash. She says she's already gone through 3 of them, and the dog's only 4 months old. And if she can't get to the leash when they're walking, she'll jump up and bite her mom's hands, arms, legs, whatever is in the way. So, and then the last thing she mentioned is that whenever she tries to pet the dog, the puppy just mouths at her and tries to chew on her hand and makes it very not pleasant to pet the dog. So those are the two questions. Now, so you'll see why they're a little bit similar. We have younger dogs that are both exhibiting different types of biting behavior. Now, the first dog is doing a resource guarding, which we've talked about. We talked about it last week on live, and I talked about it on my 2 blogs ago. And what that means is that the dog is guarding what they feel is a valuable resource. And in this example, mom is the valuable resource. So the dog is actually guarding mom. So the issue that the other puppy is having is self-control. Okay, so just doesn't know how to exhibit self-control, probably getting super overexcited very quickly, and as soon as the puppy gets to that overexcited stage, that's when you start to see the nipping and biting. And when you have a really high energy dog, it's very hard to keep them from getting into that overexcited stage. So, so what we want to do is talk for a minute about how if it was mama dog who was looking to correct the puppy, how would she handle this? Okay, so I've dealt with many litters of puppies and mama dogs, and seen it over and over again. I've seen adult dogs when they work with younger dogs, especially puppies, and there's a definite communication that goes on, and it's not the older dog saying to the puppy, could you please stop doing that? That's really annoying. Okay, that's not how they ask. So if a puppy is bugging an older dog, and whether they're nipping at them, jumping on them, trying to get the older dog to play, and the older dog does not want to play, then what you'll typically see is first the older dog will growl, and if the puppy doesn't listen to that, they'll get real stiff, and they'll probably air snap at them, so they'll snap at the puppy, and then if that doesn't work, they'll actually, bite at the puppy. Now, if it's a proper correction, there's no holes, there's no marks left, but it's very clear, it sounds very scary, it's very loud, and it's very clear to the offending puppy that they should not be doing that anymore. And it works very quickly when mama dog does it or another adult dog does it for a puppy. So the challenge is that when we have a dog that's in our home and we don't have mama dog there, how do we do that? Now, what I want to explain before we get into that is how we should be communicating to our dogs. Okay, so dogs don't speak English. It's a little secret I try and let people in on, and they pay more attention to our body language and our tone. Okay, so it's not what we say, it's how we say it. So when dogs communicate with each other, they're using body language and a little bit of noise. Okay, so most of it's body language. So what you want to make sure you're doing when you're communicating to your dog, and this is a dog of any age, is talking to them more in a language they understand. They are already paying very, very close attention to your body language and what you're doing. They know when you're upset. They know when you're happy. They know when you need a snuggle, when you're angry, and they know all of these things. And they can tell just by our body language what's going on. So you want to make sure that you communicate to them more in body language. And we humans are so verbal that we want to just say it all. And that's not helping your puppy understand what it is that you want to communicate. So the first thing is your tone. So when you talk to your dog, there's two tones that you want to deal with, okay? I usually recommend, especially with a new puppy, that you try to avoid conversational tones, okay? What most dogs will pay attention to is high-pitched noises and deep tones, and that's where you get them to pay attention. High-pitched noises, let's think like a squeaky toy, okay? That means excitement. Now, that's squeaky toys kind of emulate prey when they catch prey. It makes high-pitched noises. That's, I guess not everyone realizes that, but that's kind of why they like it. But the high-pitched noise is excitement for a dog. It's very, very exciting. For some dogs, it puts them into a higher state of arousal, and that's what high-pitched noises do. And deep tones is where they start to pay attention. Okay, so deep tones are where, when you're talking to your puppy, if you say it in a deep tone, they're going to think of like a growl. Like if your dog hears a noise in the middle of the night and they growl, it's a much different noise, or a much different growl than if they're playing tug with you. Okay, it's two totally different growls. It's a much deeper tone, and it means something different. So when we talk to our dogs, when they're doing something that we like, especially a puppy, we should be using a higher pitched tone. Good puppy, okay? And if they're doing something that we don't want them to do, you should be using a deeper tone. Knock it off, okay? So when you can do those two things, they understand that better. Now, what happens is, because we're human, us women, when we get upset, what do we do with our tone, okay? We go higher pitch. The kids are out of control. The husband's driving you crazy. I'm going to kill you. Okay, that's the higher pitch that we go to when we get upset. Men, on the other hand, when they get upset, they typically go louder and deeper in tone. So if you have a dog, what I hear a lot of people say is, the dog doesn't listen to me as the woman, but anytime my husband says something, the dog pays attention. Now that's because your husband is probably using a deeper tone. So what you have to start doing is practicing changing your tone. So when your puppy's doing something good, high pitch. When your puppy's doing something you don't want, you need to be deeper in tone, okay? It's that simple for them. If you're talking to your dog and telling them, no, 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 that's very bad. Don't do that. Don't chew on my hands. Okay, that's not telling them no. In no way, shape, or form, if they don't speak English, does that communicate to them that they're doing something that you don't want them to do. So you have to make sure you're using a loud, scary voice is what I like to say. The other piece of it is your body language, okay? So body language, we talked a little bit about it when we were talking about Come When Called and at last week's live, but body language is important as well. So if you are trying to use a deep tone with your dog because they're doing something that you don't want them to do, but they're being silly about it, and you're using a deep tone, but you're laughing, like you're smiling while you're trying to use your, no, 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 don't do that. Okay, your dog doesn't take you seriously. They see what your body language is telling them versus what your tone says, and it just doesn't work. They're like, you don't mean it. You don't really mean it, so I don't have to listen. So you want to make sure your facial expressions match what your tone is saying. So if your dog is doing something good, then you should, when you're doing your higher pitch tones, you want to have a little smile on your face, soften your face, make it very friendly. And when they're in trouble, you want to furrow your brow and give them the look, okay? Now you ladies out there, you know what the look is, okay? And if anybody has ever had a mother, you know what the look is because your mom would give it to you, okay? So the look works on dogs. So when they're doing something they're not supposed to, you want to give them the look. So very stern face, mean, make them think twice about whatever it is they're doing. The other thing you want to do is use the rest of your body language to communicate the same message. So if they're doing something really good and you're happy, you should be more relaxed in your body language. You know, if you're leaning back or just much more relaxed, that communicates to them happy. If they're doing something they're not supposed to be, and you move forward and come towards them very quickly and directly at them, making direct eye contact and the mean face, that tells them in dog language, uh-oh, I might be in trouble here. Okay, so you want to make sure that when you're communicating with your puppy that you're using those extremes. Now, one of the challenges with this is kids, okay? So let's say the dog's chasing the kids, the dog's nipping at the kids. What do kids do? They start screaming. Ah! The dog won't stop, you know, and the more the kids scream, the more excited the dog gets, okay? So it's a total miscommunication. The dog thinks that high-pitched noise means it's time to play, and the kid is actually crying because they're getting bit. So it's a very common misconception, and children cannot correct the dog in those moments, okay? If you have a child that's under the age of, I would say, 14, they should not be correcting the dog. The parents in the house, the adults in the house, should be correcting the dog because dogs look at children as litter mates, and I know we talked about this a little bit as well. But when you have a dog and a child, it would be the exact same thing as if you have two children in the house and you went to leave the house and you told one child, you're in charge of your sister or brother and you feel free to discipline them if you want while I'm gone. Okay, that doesn't work. That's the same thing as if you ask your child to try and discipline the dog. So the parents have to step in and make sure that they are communicating on behalf of the child to the dog that whatever they're doing is unacceptable. I hope that clarifies that a little bit. Now, the other thing that we need to talk about is reward and consequence. Okay, so reward is pretty easy. Most people figure that out very easily. Dogs are usually really jazzed by food, treats, or affection or attention. Okay, those are usually the three. And you find that your dog will really like one of those things. Some dogs like all of them, which makes it really easy to train them. But you want to find what your dog is most excited about, and that's their reward when they do something properly. The other thing, real quick before I talk about the consequences, is the timing of it is very important. Okay, so the reward or the consequence needs to be delivered at the moment that the dog is doing what you want or don't want. So the example is if you're teaching your dog to sit and you give them a hand signal and they sit on the ground for you, and you go to give them the treat, and when they go to get the treat, they jump up to eat the treat, they just got rewarded for jumping, not for sitting. So whatever happened last is what they're either being rewarded for or corrected for. So the timing of it is very important. So as far as consequences go, you want to make sure that you find something that means something to your dog. All dogs are different. They all have unique personalities. So what works for one dog is not going to work for another dog. If you have a dog who's on the personality scale that's on the other side, where they're a worker bee or shy or an introvert, sometimes just a stern tone and a loud, hey, knock it off, is all it takes to get them to, I'm sorry, I won't do that again, okay? If your dog's on the other end of the spectrum, they're a socialite, or they're middle management, or they're a natural born leader, they're going to look at you like, is that all you got? Because I don't have to listen to that. That's not intimidating me. So you want to find a consequence that works for your dog. And in my definition, a consequence that works means that the dog is discouraged from doing that behavior again. Okay, so you want to look at it from that standpoint. If you yell at your dog because they're barking and you tell them to be quiet, and they respond to you telling them to be quiet, but they continue then the next time they see something to bark, then that means it's not enough of a consequence, because it's not stopping them from the next time they go to do that activity to say, wait a minute, I might get in trouble for this, and the last time I got in trouble I didn't like it, so I'm not going to do that again. So you have to figure out what works for your dog. I have two children who are adults now, very productive adults, I'm happy to say, and I love them dearly, but when they were teenagers, they were lucky to survive teenagehood. And I always tell my training classes that when they were teenagers, one of my daughters, if I had ground her to her room for the weekend because she made a poor choice, she would have acted like I was ruining her social life for all eternity. I might as well have cut off her right arm. I was the meanest mom in the world, and that was that. And the other daughter, if I had grounded her to her room for the weekend, then that would have meant that was where she would have been anyway. So it really was not a consequence. So for her, I had to come up with something more creative, which turned out to be weeding. We had a big property with a lot of beds and a lot of weeds. So if she made a bad decision, I would send her out to the yard to weed. And it would be weeding for the whole weekend. And my daughter to this day thinks that weeding is corporal punishment. And she was not happy with the consequence, but it allowed her to make better decisions moving forward, because she knew what she would deal with had she not, made that poor choice. She knew she was going to have to be weeding. So you want to make sure the consequence works for your dog. The other thing, so when you're talking about the dog that was nipping at the children, okay, so if your dog is sitting next to you and someone comes up to you and your dog growls or nips or something like that, you need to correct that dog immediately. And when I say you correct, I mean the person that the dog is guarding. So if it's mom needs to correct the dog immediately. The dog needs to know that that behavior is totally unacceptable for mom. So my definition of correcting a dog in that situation would be to be very loud and scary and immediately toss the dog onto the ground so they don't get to be near me anymore because they did something that I don't like. And, they need to know that that was unacceptable. So that would be my definition in that scenario of how to correct that with a 4-month-old puppy. If the dog is hurting the kids in the yard, okay, then mom needs to figure out a way to communicate to the dog that that behavior is unacceptable. So what I would recommend in that situation is to get a long line. Okay, so what that is, leashes, they're very long. They come in 15-foot all the way up to 50-foot lengths. And you can get them in either cotton or nylon. If you have a stronger dog, you want to get the nylon because the cotton can break. For smaller dogs, the cotton is fine. I know like PetSmart and Petco sell the cotton ones. If you need a nylon one because you have a bigger dog, then you want to get that online. But to get a long line, have your dog on it, you hold the other end of the leash, and do a sting operation. Set the puppy up, okay? So have the kids start running around and playing. You know that the dog's going to get amped up and probably start trying to nip at the dog, or nip at the children. So in that situation, you want to use a combination of your loud, scary voice, your body language, so you march towards the dog like they're in really big trouble. And I would also suggest that you try a squirt bottle in that scenario. So for the simple fact that a squirt bottle, you want to get one from Home Depot, not or Lowe's. They sell the cleaning squirt bottles. They're the industrial ones, not a plant mister. If you use a plant mister when you squirt your dog, they're like, thank you for cooling me while I'm misbehaving. You need that steady stream, those industrial squirt bottles. You can get a distance of 10 to 15 feet with a straight stream of water, and you're gonna aim for right here, okay? Most dogs do not like that. There are some that will try and catch the water, but most dogs, when they're being startled like that, don't like it. So that would be my suggestion, is to set up a sting operation with a long line so that you can control the dog and correct them so they understand that that behavior is unacceptable. Now, what you can do at the same time is teach your kids and your dog something more productive. So if your dog really likes to herd, it's a herding breed, or a combination of herding breeds, then you could teach your dog very easily to play soccer with the kids, where the dog herds the ball and not the kids. So that's something that you could try with them to give them a productive outlet for that herding instinct, because it is an instinct. They're bred to do it. So if you give them a positive outlet for that, then that would help, as opposed to the dog finding any way to get that out, that desire they have to herd. If you don't give them something productive to do, they will find a way to do it that probably won't be productive in your definition of it. So that's what I would try with that puppy. Now, the other thing I just want to say on this, both topics, is that if you have a dog I would categorize these as behavioral issues. These are not obedience issues. You can't use obedience to stop the dogs from doing this. You can't do a sit-stay. It would have to be the world's best sit-stay to get that dog to do it. And they're puppies, so they barely have a sit, let alone a sit-stay. So it's very difficult to use obedience to fix these issues. I consider them behavioral issues. And when you're dealing with a behavioral issue, there is no one quick fix. Okay, there's no magic thing that if I tell you, if you say this to your dog, then it'll magically stop. Like I see a lot of people that will come in and they've watched TV and they're to their dog. Like that sound has some sort of magic to it that your dog will automatically understand it and stop. It has nothing to do with the noise. It has to do with the energy and the body language of the individual who's giving it. So there is no quick fix for these things. And what I would like you to do is to look at it as, if your child, let's say your child was misbehaving and you grounded them, you told them you can't play with your phone for the weekend, or you can't play video games for the weekend, which for nowadays for kids, that's the version today of cutting off the right arm and being the meanest mom ever. But if you do that, they did something bad, you told them they're grounded, and 6 hours into the grounding, your child is able to torture you enough so that you let them out of the grounding, and you go, okay, go ahead, go, play your game, because they're driving you crazy, or, because you're a softie. But the bottom line is, you've just taught your child that they don't have consequences. It's not a matter of teaching them that, I'm being easy on you this time. What you're teaching them is, if you do that thing again, that same mistake that I grounded you for this time, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You get your phone taken away for 6 hours? So with dogs, it's the same thing. So if you have a dog that is biting people in the house, and you just do one thing, like you just do getting your dog off your lap and telling them no, that's not by itself the magic key to fixing that issue. There's a bigger picture that needs to be looked at. So you want to look at the overall health of the dog, the personality of the dog. You want to look at the dynamic in the house. When I say dynamic, I mean the dynamic between the humans and the dog. And you need to take a more holistic approach to it. to make sure that the dog is in an environment where they can clearly understand what it is that you're looking for. So that's the best possible relationship that you can have with your dog, is when you have that level of communication that's not just sit, stay. It's, I understand your body language, you understand my body language, and we get each other. And the dog knows that you get them, and you can read when they're upset or they're not feeling good or they don't like something. That's the best place to be. So I hope that gave both you ladies some tips with your puppies, and we will be continuing to talk about all of the behavioral stuff and how dogs view the world, and how can you get to communicate with them better and faster, because my goal is, in today's busy world, I think that if there's the fastest and easiest way to get from point A to point B, and point A is you got a dog, and point B is now you have a well-behaved dog that you're not embarrassed to take in public or to have people over your home. If I can teach you the fastest way to get from one to the other, and it's easy and it works, then why not? I hope this helps everybody, and please, if you have any questions, feel free to private message me or email me your questions, and I'll be happy to answer them next week. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.